Following through on his plan, Governor Abbott of Texas has dropped off illegal immigrants in Washington, D.C. via bus. Previously, the governor said that because the Biden administration is taking immigrants by bus and dropping them off in Texas communities, he would take these people, put them on a bus, and send them to Washington, D.C. It's kind of like a, how do you like it, Joe Biden? But I'm not sure how effective it will be, because is he really punishing politicians? I mean, they might live somewhat near D.C., but I don't think they care all that much. How about Ron DeSantis' plan? He said he's going to send these illegal immigrants to Biden's home state of Delaware. Now, also, maybe a unique idea, and I think it's a fair idea. No one's forcing the illegal immigrants onto these buses. That's kind of the point. They're voluntarily going to these areas. And if the Biden administration wants to be shipping illegal immigrants all around the country, then why not send them to D.C. or to Biden's home state? The issue is, what Biden is doing with the illegal immigration with the southern border, it's pissing everybody off. Even Democrats are calling him out. Even the media is calling him out. But this plan of taking illegal immigrants by bus, dropping them off in small communities, causes serious harm to these communities. And these governors doing some kind of tit for tat doesn't hurt Joe Biden or Democrats at all. I'm sure it'll hurt people in Delaware who might get mad, but Joe Biden's elected through the Electoral College, which is national. And D.C. is a federal jurisdiction, so sure, maybe you'll interfere with and bother local D.C. residents, but Joe Biden doesn't care. I don't think it's going to have any real impact on him. But it's something we've seen from the Biden administration over the past year and a half or so, which is rather shocking, that they've been shipping illegal immigrants all across the country. Not too long ago, we heard from a police department in Ohio that said we will no longer hold illegal immigrants in our jails, because what was happening is they'd send the illegal immigrants to this Ohio jurisdiction, say, we just need you to hold them in a jail cell for the time being, and then come back a week or so later and be like, release them. And the cops would be like, you mean release them into our town? Yeah. And so the cops are like, nope, we're not doing this anymore. We also saw the horrifying story of minors being flown across the country in the dead of night. And one of these federal contractors on body camera footage said that they have betrayed the American people. All right, well, we got a very serious problem on our hands. With Title 42 being ended by the Biden administration, we're now hearing from, I think Mexico and Guatemala are warning there's going to be a massive surge. 140,000 illegal immigrants coming through the border. And how are we supposed to handle that at a time when we're dealing with recession warnings, a labor shortage, food shortages, food rationing, war, and Joe Biden thinks that he will be able to just have a porous border and everything will work out? No, I'm sorry. You know, when my assumption is that the Democratic administration, that Joe Biden's plan is destroying this country, I don't know how you assume incompetence over malice. You know, that's Hanlon's razor. I love to cite it. Never attribute to malice that which can be explained by incompetence. Unfortunately, at this point, you would have to make extreme assumptions to assume incompetence, because anyone knows what you're doing on what's happening on the border via the Biden administration is causing problems. And Beto O'Rourke himself is criticizing Joe Biden. So it has to be intentional. There's a lot of reasons for it. One might be demographics. Progressives and liberals don't have kids. Conservatives do. What happens in 10 or 20 years? This country becomes conservative just by virtue of people having kids and other people not having kids. A lot of people point out bringing in illegal immigrants brings in Democrat voters, and you're missing a step there. It brings in urban residents who have kids, and those kids are more likely to vote for Democrats. Maybe that's the real plan. Well, let's take a look at what's going on here. The first bus to drop off illegal immigrants is here, and even Beto O'Rourke is criticizing Joe Biden's plan. Before we get started, my friends, we're going to give a shout out to one of our latest shows. At timcast.com, you can see we got Pop Culture Crisis. Head over to youtube.com/popculturecrisis and subscribe for our latest culture show. We want to change the game. We can't just talk about politics. A lot of people don't care about politics. What can we do? Well, we started with a political show. You got me, You like the show or you don't, but thanks for watching. And now we need a show on cultural issues, and that's what we've launched at youtube.com/popculturecrisis. It's just a show about Hollywood movies, video games, etc. We're going to be promoting them to the best of our abilities because now we're going to produce content just talking about normal cultural issues, entertainment, but you know that our values are behind it. Liberty, personal responsibility, but the message is secondary. If we want to change politics, we have to engage with culture. That means talking about it, entertaining these issues, explaining our views on them. And the next step after this is making culture ourselves. We already have music and entertainment shows. But again, subscribe to youtube.com/popculturecrisis. If you're into this kind of stuff, watch the show. I think you'll get a kick out of it. It's a good fun. Now, let's read this first story. Oh, wait, don't forget to smash that like button. Subscribe to this channel, too. Share the show with your friends. Share Pop Culture Crisis with your friends. Here's the first story from timcast.com. A bus from Texas arrived in the nation's capital Wednesday morning, dropping off dozens of illegal migrants blocks from Congress. The convoy is part of Texas Governor Greg Abbott's push to secure the southern border and stem the flow of illegal immigration from Central America. The Republican unveiled his plan last week, saying he has directed the Texas Division of Emergency Management to organize the buses. Quote, the bus pulled up at approximately 8 a.m. local time, blocks away from the U.S. Capitol building. Fox News has learned that they came from the Del Rio sector in Texas, after coming to the U.S. from Colombia, Cuba, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. Upon the bus's arrival in D.C., individuals disembarked one by one, except for family units who exited together. They checked in with officials and had wristbands they were wearing cut off before being told they could go. Quote, Texans demand and deserve an aggressive, comprehensive strategy to secure our border, not President Biden's lackluster leadership, Abbott said in a statement. As the federal government continues to roll back common sense policies that once kept our communities safe, our local law enforcement has stepped up to protect Texans from dangerous criminals, deadly drugs, and illegal contraband flooding into the Lone Star State. Here's what I find fascinating. In most of these discussions you have between the left and the right, there's no nuance on the left. They're like, you're a racist, you're xenophobic. They say that you hate these poor children when they come through the border. Okay, let's talk about nuance. I do not want to see these children die in a desert. And it's happening. I do not want to see the smugglers, known as coyotes, for those that don't know the term. I don't want to see them abusing children. When Donald Trump called out coyotes smuggling people across the border, the left thought he was talking about actual animals because they didn't know the word coyote was a reference to a human trafficker. Okay, well, there's human traffickers. But if they don't even know that, how can they argue on policy? What happens? Well, let's talk about the border wall. With the border wall up, it funnels a lot of the illicit activities to single locations. People say, look, there's a gate here you can open. Yeah, sure, great. Make all of the people go towards that gate so you can apprehend them once they come through. We're talking about criminals, human traffickers. Now, what about these kids who are dying in the desert? Yes, we need to end the human trafficking and smuggling because it results in death. And we are also not in great shape right now. I mean, look, the United States is a strong and wealthy nation, but we've got serious problems ahead of us. We can't just say, open the doors, let everybody in. That would just make more economic problems. Here's the story from the Daily Beast. I love this one. Greg Abbott's D.C. migrant bus is a dehumanizing political stunt. Now, that's funny. He actually did it. The Texas governor made good on his threat to send undocumented immigrants to Washington, D.C. by bus, proving there's no end to the GOP's xenophobic depravity. Oh, really? So you mean to tell me when the Biden administration smuggles children via military aircraft or puts them on buses and sends them to the communities in Texas, that's not xenophobic? But when Abbott does literally the same thing and it's voluntary, that is? Abbott has no federal authority to ship these migrants on buses. The migrants have to choose to go on the buses. Now, Joe Biden does have the authority and is forcing these people. You see the lies? People as props. How about if you send people to my town, I send them back? Well, that's the name of the game, right? Whatever it is the right does must be wrong, evil, racist, xenophobic, but the left can do worse, and they ignore it. Here we go. Jen Psaki, she dismissed this as a stunt. Back on April 8th, Jen Psaki blasts Texas Governor Greg Abbott's publicity stunt plan to bus thousands of illegal immigrants to Washington, D.C., and says he can't force them onto coaches. Apparently he's not. Psaki dismissed Texas Governor Greg Abbott's plan to bus thousands of illegal immigrants to D.C. as a publicity stunt. Well, I'm not aware of what authority the governor would be doing that under. I think it's pretty clear that this is a publicity stunt. I know that the governor of Texas or any state does not have the legal authority to compel anyone to get on a bus. Really? Psaki added that Abbott will not be able to compel migrants. Quote, his own office admits that a migrant would need to voluntarily be transported and he can't compel them to because, again, enforcement of our country's immigration laws lies with the federal government and not a state. At a press conference on Wednesday, Abbott said, quote, to help local officials whose communities are being overwhelmed by hordes of illegal immigrants who are being dropped off by the Biden administration, Texas is providing charter buses to send these illegal immigrants who've been dropped off by the Biden administration to Washington, D.C. We are sending them to the U.S. Capitol, where the Biden admin will be more immediately able to address the needs of the people who come across our border. Abbott said, the plan was to drop migrants off at the steps of the U.S. Capitol building itself and added, the Biden administration, they have been dumping large numbers of migrants on cities up and down the border, leaving cities to grapple with challenges they don't have the capability of dealing with. They themselves have been putting these migrants on buses to San Antonio. So I said, I've got a better idea. Instead of busing these people to San Antonio, let's continue the ride all the way to D.C. I asked how many buses might be deployed for the scheme. Chief of Texas's Division of Emergency Management, Nim Kidd, said they'd deployed as many as needed and cited the 900 previously called in to help tackle previous disasters. Kidd told the press conference, the long answer is in past disasters, we have pulled up to 900 buses for evacuations. We will use as many buses as we need to follow the governor's direction to get this done. I bring you now to Fox News from April 6. DeSantis vows to send illegal immigrants dumped in Florida to Biden's home state of Delaware. DeSantis said he's concerned with keeping people safe in Florida. His remarks came after the No Patient Left Alone Act was signed into law on Wednesday in Naples, Florida. They're going to say, what we're doing in Florida is saying we're not going to let the recklessness of those policies impact our state. If businesses or contractors are dumping people who are illegal into Florida from southern Texas, we're going to go after their ability to do business in Florida. If Biden is dumping people, which he has dumped people, they fly them in at 2 a.m. They haven't done it lately, but they did it many months ago. We now have money where we can reroute them to sanctuary states like Delaware, and we're going to do that to make sure we're keeping people safe. So where are we now? Well, Texas followed through. And here's the story from the Daily Mail. Revealed 140,000 migrants are heading toward U.S. as Mexican officials warns Biden lifting Title 42 on May 23rd will create chaos at the border. Okay. We got a Mexican official giving us a warning. We've got Guatemala readies its army for U.S.-bound caravan of up to 2,000 migrants forming in Honduras this Friday as Biden lifts Title 42. The Guatemalans are gearing up. The Mexicans are warning us. Beto O'Rourke criticizes Biden over ending Title 42 without a plan for migrants. And we have this. Democratic U.S. Senate candidate Mandela Barnes opposes Biden administration's plan to lift Title 42 rule at the border. Amazing. What could Biden have done to get even Democrats to criticize him? I'm surprised because it's also the Washington Post. Well, at least an op-ed in the Washington Post. This is from Mark A. Thiessen. I'm not going to pretend that the Washington Post opinion pieces represent the editorial opinion, but certainly it's here. Biden is turning a border crisis into an outright catastrophe. They write, Democrats are poised to lose control of the House and Senate this November in no small part because of the crisis President Biden has unleashed on the southern border. Now, Biden is ready to double down on disaster by lifting Title 42, the Trump-era public health order that allows border officials to turn away illegal migrants to prevent the spread of COVID-19. If Biden does so, he will turn crisis into a catastrophe, both at the border and at the polls. By lifting Title 42, the Biden administration is trying to have it both ways. declaring the pandemic emergency over for illegal migrants at the border, but not for the rest of us. If the pandemic emergency is over, why are they still insisting we wear masks on planes? Why are lawful international air passengers still required to get negative coronavirus tests before entering the U.S.? And why, if the emergency is over, is the Biden administration asking Congress for billions of dollars in emergency COVID spending? Democrats need to decide either we are in a COVID emergency or we are not. He goes on to write, right now, Title 42 is all that stands between us and an effectively open border. That's because on taking office, Biden reversed President Donald Trump's other successful border policies. He got rid of the Remain in Mexico policy, which had required asylum seekers to wait in Mexico while their asylum claim is considered, deterring those with false claims from showing up at the border. A federal judge forced the administration to reinstate the policy, but the White House has implemented it anemically, the Post reports, with a narrow scope and none of the zeal. Biden also terminated the safe third country agreements Trump negotiated with El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras, which allowed migrants to apply for asylum in the first foreign country they crossed into, reducing incentives to make the long and dangerous journey to the U.S. border. And for those who do make the journey, Biden essentially hung a big welcome sign. Despite record high border crossings, deportations under Biden have dropped to the lowest levels in immigration and customs enforcement history. In reversing these and other Trump policies, Biden has produced an unprecedented torrent of illegal crossings that has overwhelmed border officials. That surge in illegal migrants has been accompanied by a flood of deadly fentanyl crossing at the southern border, which has helped fuel an increase of 30% in overdose deaths, killing more Americans than guns and homicides, and hitting minority communities the hardest. Wow. I mean, that's kind of crazy to see how bad it's gotten, to see that it could potentially get worse. Daily Mail from March 31st. Migrants answer Joe's call. First caravan sets off from Mexico bound for the U.S. after Biden revealed he would end Title 42 on May 23rd amid fears the army will be needed to control the flood. I mean, we're in a bad spot here in the United States, my friends. Global famine? That's what they're saying. Inflation is at near record highs, 8.5%. Take a look at this story from timcast.com. Inflation soars to historic high of 11.2 in producer index. The cost of goods has reached record levels not seen since 2010 from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. We're in double digits, baby. Double-digit inflation. This means your gas is going to get more expensive. Your food is going to get more expensive. What can we do? They can raise interest rates. Nobody seems to have the balls to do it. Boy, would they be hated. We can try and protect labor. That would require better border security. We can try and protect our food supply. That would also require border security, of which we have none. Of which we have none. It's remarkable to me to see these stories. Lawmakers say illegal immigrants taking selfies to celebrate crossing the border. Yeah, of course they are. They made it. I know this country's awesome. I can respect that. I have more respect for the illegal immigrants who risk life and limb to come to America than the woke leftists who hate this country and vote for policies to allow illegal immigrants in. At least the illegal immigrants are working hard and taking big risks to accomplish something. I think this country would be infinitely better off if all of these illegal immigrants who are coming to this country were just granted citizenship, and the woke left cult members went to the other countries and did right by those people. That's the old meme. We'll trade you, our leftists, for your hard-working and dedicated migrants. I'm down for it. These people love the idea of America. Now, the challenge is they don't hold our values, and that could be disruptive to the United States because you need a certain degree of cultural values to maintain a system. I think that's where we are. Cultural enforcement is more important than anything. You can have a law that says you cannot make pie on Sundays. But if nobody is going to enforce such a silly law, the law may as well not exist. Right now, cultural enforcement is minimal. What we have for the most part is laws, and sometimes cops do a thing and sometimes they don't. Sometimes things that aren't laws are enforced, and sometimes things that are laws aren't. Take a look at COVID. None of these lockdowns were laws. Yet people just went through, the cops, they just did it anyway. They would go to businesses, block them, they would arrest people, even though there's no law. What about airplanes? There's no federal law. There's an executive order on mask mandates. But they lie and say it's a law. It's not. Executive order, not a law. But there are enough people to just do as they're told. And maybe that's what they're banking on. They're trying to see how many people will blindly follow. And you know what? A lot of cops do. A lot of cops are told to do something they know is wrong and say, nah, I'll do it anyway because I don't want to lose my job. That's what you see in Venezuela. In Venezuela, you wonder how it is their National Guard fighting these protesters who want freedom, even though everybody knows they're starving. Well, it's simple. The National Guard, these authorities, they know they get food. And they're thinking, I have food for my family. I don't care about anything else. It's a dangerous thought. You would burn your own country down for temporary sustenance because you're scared. This is where we're at. All right, Beto. What do you have to say on this issue? The Hill reports, Texas Democratic gubernatorial candidate Beto O'Rourke on Tuesday criticized the Biden administration's termination of Title 42, arguing that it shouldn't have done so without a clear-cut plan of how to deal with the influx of immigrants. Quote, it does not make sense to end this until there is a real plan and the capacity in place to handle those and address those that come over. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I agree with Beto O'Rourke. He's right. Now, this dude is one of the worst people ever. Yeah, we're coming for your guns. Then he comes out, I'm all about the Second Amendment. Pander more, bro. You see, the reason he's coming out and saying this is because he realizes he's lost Texas. Texans do not like this stuff. Which is why they like Abbott. Because Abbott's like, I'm going to put these people on a bus and send them your way. Dismiss it all you want. Lie about it all you want. The American people are aware of this. More and more they're learning. I think Beto O'Rourke saw that. He probably saw the southern border counties, which are Latino, and voted Republican, and he went, okay, we better figure out what's going on because we need those votes. The good news is, I think moving forward, you're going to see Democrats be forced to drop the insanity. The wokeness, the Twitter universe will not be a part of the system. People like Beto O'Rourke will have no choice but to come out and be like, no, I'm for gun rights. Illegal immigration is bad. Because most people agree. And the politicians are just trying to latch on to what they think is popular. They're going to mention O'Rourke supported the removal of Title 42 in the past, according to the Tribune. The former Democratic congressman has pushed for a different system for asylum claims that won't overwhelm border staff. O'Rourke also said border staff are concerned that the Biden administration will leave them high and dry without a concrete plan to deal with the shift in the number of migrants at the southern border. The Department of Homeland Security believes that after Title 42 is lifted, the border could face up to 18,000 migrants entering the U.S. per day, according to the Tribune. What it has done is produce a situation where the same person is crossing multiple times a week. And under Title 42, that Border Patrol agent simply turns that person back around, and then that person tries to cross the next day. They're not arrested, not detained. There are no consequences for someone who is not following our laws when they try to come into this country. And it means that this country is not following its laws when it comes to those who are trying to make legitimate claim for asylum. Everyone is legitimately concerned about the lack of a plan. We should hold the federal government accountable for doing its job, and they're not doing that. Do these people have amnesia? That's what scares me. That's what Candace Owens said to me. She was saying that, you know, she's worried when the news comes out and things like this happen, people will get amnesia. They'll forget that Beto O'Rourke is with the left on this. He's changed his position to pander to you. He is not an avatar of your anger and concerns. He is a slimy, manipulative man who seeks only to take the form of what he thinks will get him a vote. And he would burn down Joe Biden to win those votes. Do not vote for people like this. Now, Democratic U.S. Senate candidate Mandela Barnes, opposing Biden's plan to lift Title 42 at the border. I say any one of these Democrats. Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes, every single one of these Democrats. No, sorry, have a nice day. During an interview with the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, Barnes said he doesn't support the administration's plan to lift what is known as Title 42, which has been used to turn away migrants at the southern border during the pandemic. I'd like to see Biden put forward a comprehensive plan that deals with an influx of asylum seekers before we lift Title 42. You know what? I agree with that. I ain't going to vote for any of these people. I've made that mistake in the past. I'm not playing those games. We're in a crisis right now because of the lies. Inflation is at a historic high in the producer index at 11.2 because of these people. Because they came to us and they said, Orange Man bad. And they said, do your duty and vote for Joe Biden. Now here we are with massive inflation, gas prices through the roof, the economic crisis as the parent issue here. But the influx of illegal immigrants is going to make all of it worse. What can we do? In November of this year, we can go out and vote. And we can vote against Democrats. Yeah, that means voting for Republicans. Okay, here's what we can do. Find your primary. Figure out when your primary election is. Figure it out. Go and vote in that primary for the Republican Party and get rid of these neocon uniparty establishment shills. Who was it? Was it Kevin McCarthy, I think, was like, no, we can't have a political impeachment of Joe Biden. Look, I've always hated the Republican Party. I hate's a strong word. I've always just not cared for them. I really despise them now because you have people standing up and saying, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. And the Republican Party are those blocking the people. I'm sure the left feels similarly with the Democratic Party, but it really is the Republicans that it's the Republican Party where we've seen the populist anger actually gain a foothold. Among the left, you have progressives, but you have the Freedom Caucus actually doing something, which is why I say, the Democratic Party is mostly trash. The Republican Party is overwhelmingly trash, but there's a couple people in the Republican Party that do a good job. It's the Republican establishment that's blocking the people. Joe Biden must be impeached and convicted. Why? Illicit business dealings in Ukraine and in China. And I think, most of you probably know about these issues. But Kevin McCarthy, a Republican, comes out and he's like, oh, now, we can't do it. Amazing. That's what you get from Republican leadership. Joe Biden should not be president because he's bad at it. But people really voted for him. I've got a couple questions on IRL, and they're like, if the Democrats win in November, will that be enough to convince you of fraud? They're trying to demoralize you. The fraud narrative is a trap. Is there voter fraud? Of course there's voter fraud. Voter fraud happens. There's a bunch of people getting arrested for it. I covered all of these stories. Is it massive enough to alter federal elections? We've not seen evidence of that, at least definitive. And there have been investigations, and we've seen these audits, and the data doesn't come out. So I can only be like, I don't need to go down that rabbit hole and say these things, because I can tell you this very simply. They need every edge they can get. Look at what happened in Georgia. I firmly believe Republicans would have maintained the Senate if Trump didn't push the fraud narrative. There were people in Georgia saying, I refuse to vote because I don't believe it's fair anyway. And look what you get. Democrats controlling the House and the Senate. There you go. Marjorie Taylor Greene is in Congress, and they're doing everything they can to stop her. Lauren Boebert as well. So when you see characters like that, can't you be like, yeah, it is possible to win these elections, but you have to vote? Now, as for 2020, yeah, I think there are problems in the election, but the problems stem from legislation, stems from state laws, stems from a lot of issues that states complained about. I don't believe the solution is, I don't believe the answer is people didn't vote. I think, I've seen it. I've seen people who I've never seen vote before vote for the first time. And then they walked away. I know one dude who fled the country afterwards. And I'm like, they took away sports, took away movies, took away video games. And the only thing you had was politics. And everything taken away from you was Trump's fault. It works. How are they going to play that line going into 2020 and 2024? They're not gonna. If COVID lockdowns do come back, I tell you this, people will just blame Biden. And they'll be like, well, at least under Trump, things weren't this bad. It is bad. I feel for these illegal immigrants. I want them to have good lives. I really do. And I know why they love America. America's incredible. I also know that we can't just open the door and say, everyone come on in. because we're dealing with our own issues. When you've got more than one Democrat coming out, even in, presumably in Wisconsin, calling out Joe Biden and his administration, Jen Psaki being wrong over and over again, Mexican officials warning us of massive caravans, at what point do you just say enough with the crooked, crony establishment? I don't get it. I just don't. Now, to that question, if the Democrats win in November, look, I'll tell you this. You want me to believe something, I need evidence. Like, I need hard, visible proof. The election stuff is difficult. Too much conspiracy, garbage, and nonsense. And these audits didn't produce anything substantial, any hard, clear-cut evidence. Just more questions that I think play into the very obvious shadow campaign that Time Magazine wrote about. How they changed laws and rules, and it worked. Pay attention to what's going to happen later this year. Because these are the questions about, you know, the fairness and legitimacy of our elections. The left claimed that Trump didn't win. The right claimed that Biden didn't win. Big tech companies banned the right and left the left alone. You need to build culture. You need to focus on core issues. This is what I was saying the other day to Elijah Schaffer, because he was talking about Bill Gates and like depopulation. I said, we don't need to go near that stuff. That is confusing to people. Maybe it's true, maybe not. I don't know. I know Bill Gates said he wants to reduce population growth. There's too many people, he says. What you need to focus on is each individual issue. Is illegal immigration bad? Yes. Okay, let's end it. Are you concerned about what your children are being taught? Yes. Okay, well, let's change that. If you bring all these things together and then start making claims about big conspiracies, well, then people are going to be like, I don't know what you're talking about, man. This is crazy. You got an issue about elections? Here's what I say. You guys know that in Pennsylvania, the universal mail-in voting was unconstitutional, and a court ruled that, but only after the election? Well, it stands to reason if the court said it's not legitimate, there are questions about what should have happened during that election. These are questions you can ask regular people and have them say, yeah, good point. What does that mean? If you want to introduce these ideas to people, you don't come at them and scream, they're turning the frogs gay. You come at them and say, like, yo, what's this ad? You see this atrazine stuff? Read about that. And they'll say, yeah, sure, I don't know. We'll Google it. That's how you wake people up. You give them a chance. You give them a bit of information, and you say, take a look, explore for yourself. You don't scream in their face, the end is nigh, or anything like that. We got a problem. It seems like this country is being ripped apart. Abbott is making bold moves in opposition to what the Biden administration is doing. Florida may do the same, and you know what? More power to them. I just don't think it really solves the problem. It may solve the problem for those that live in Texas and Florida, though. I suppose that's true. Maybe that's all that matters if you're the governor of that state. But if politics is downstream from culture, and we don't change the culture, then what ends up happening is we just keep bailing water, but the ship is sinking. Okay, we'll bail water. It's important, right? But let's plug the hole. Let's make sure the boat stops sinking, bail water, and then make it to dry land. I'll leave it there. Next segment is coming up at 8 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimCastIRL, where, ladies and gentlemen, Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire crew will be taking over TimCastIRL, at least for a few moments. So we'll effectively have the whole Daily Wire crew as our guests for only a short amount of time, 10, 15, I think 15, 20 minutes maybe. We'll see how long we go for. And then we'll jump back to our regular studio, but I'm really excited for this. It's an honor and a privilege that they've helped set this up. It's going to be really, really cool. So check it out. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all then.